Larry's Tavern, Day. The cozy interior of Larry's Tavern is alive with the clinking of glasses and the murmur of conversation. Over the ambient sounds, a faint crackle of electricity from a bug zapper can be heard in the background. Larry, a burly but kind-hearted bartender, wipes down the counter with a rag, his eyes darting over the patrons with a watchful gaze. Suddenly, the door swings open with a bang, and in strides Frank, a notorious troublemaker in town, his swagger exuding confidence and mischief. He's accompanied by 5 of his rowdiest friends, their presence casting a shadow over the tavern. Frank, boisterously, look who's back, boys. Larry's Tavern, where the drinks are cold and the trouble's hot. Larry's jaw clenches as he braces himself for trouble, but he remains composed as he serves Frank and his friends drinks. Inked. Larry's Tavern, later. Later, as the evening wears off, the mood in the tavern grows increasingly volatile. Frank and his friends become louder and more unruly, provoking other patrons and causing a disturbance. Larry watches with growing concern, knowing that trouble is brewing. Larry approaches Frank, his voice firm. Larry, Frank, I warned you. You and your friends need to leave. Now. Frank, laughing, or what, Larry? You gonna kick us out? Larry's gaze hardens, and he nods to the bouncer, who steps forward to escort Frank and his friends out of the tavern. Larry, that's exactly what I'm going to do. You've overstayed your welcome. Inked. Larry's Tavern, continuous. The tension in the air is palpable as Frank and his friends exchange glances, sizing up the situation. Frank, sneering, you think you can kick us out? We'll see about that. Suddenly, Frank and his friends lunge forward, pushing past the bouncer and charging toward the bar. Larry's heart pounds in his chest as he braces himself for the confrontation. Larry, voice trembling with anger, you are a bad person, Frank. But I won't let you destroy everything I've worked so hard to build. A fierce determination flashes in Larry's eyes as he reaches under the bar, grabbing a claymore sword, its gleaming blade reflecting the dim light of the tavern. Larry, get out of my tavern, all of you. And don't you ever come back. Inked. Larry's Tavern, continuous. The patrons watch in tense silence as Frank and his friends hesitate, facing the imposing figure of Larry brandishing the ancient weapon. In a sudden movement, Larry swings the claymore with precision, slicing the top off a nearby beer bottle. Beer spews out in a foamy arc, dousing Frank and his friends, who are left stunned and dripping. But the unexpected happens. Frank and each of his friends, instead of cowering, replicate Larry's actions. They reach for bottles and slice off the tops, foam erupting in a chaotic symphony. Larry's eyes widen in disbelief as Frank and his friends laugh triumphantly, mocking Larry's authority. Frank, tauntingly, looks like we've learned a thing or two from you, Larry. The situation escalates beyond Larry's control as the tavern erupts into chaos. Tables are overturned, chairs are thrown, and punches are exchanged amidst the swirling foam. Larry's anger boils over as he watches the chaos unfold before him. Desperate to regain control, he reaches for the only weapon he can find, a wet noodle from a nearby bowl. With a fierce determination, Larry wields the wet noodle like a sword, brandishing it with all the seriousness he can muster. Larry, voice booming, that's it. You've all crossed the line. One more move and I'll give you a taste of this wet noodle. The threat hangs in the air, absurd yet somehow menacing, as Frank and his friends pause, momentarily stunned by Larry's unexpected declaration. Inked. Larry's Tavern, later. In the aftermath of the chaos, Larry stands amidst the wreckage of his tavern, a mix of anger and disappointment clouding his features. Larry's faith in the patrons of his tavern is shaken, but deep down, he knows he won't give up on restoring order. As Larry begins to clean up the mess, he spots a bowl of noodles on a nearby table. With a weary sigh, he sits down and begins to eat, a single noodle hanging from his mouth. The patrons watch in awe as Larry savors the noodle, a small smile spreading across his face. The scene fades out on Larry, surrounded by the wreckage of his tavern, but with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. End of episode.